Hello everyone and welcome to the very first Tabletop Tea Time. This is going to be a monthly variety show where I'm going to be joined by board game creators to talk about specific topics, or they'll have ongoing segments on the show. Sometimes we'll get designers on and I'll sort of interview them, try and find out a little bit about their brand new games. We're also, every month, going to have a spotlight put on one creator, so you can find out a little bit more about them in particular, and we're sort of sharing the love out that way. Now this time we are here to talk about Cult of the New. It's a new series, so Cult of the New it is. So let's hand over to Josh to see which side of that Cult of the New fence that he sits on.
Hi, I'm Josh from the YouTube channel Josh Yaks, and you can decide whether I'm Cult of the New or Cult of the Old after I explain my situation to you. So essentially my parents were modern board game hobbyists back in, probably going back to the 70s even, and so ever since I could hold myself in an upright position about 45 years ago, I was also into the hobby of modern board gaming. Now it's stayed that way throughout my entire life, with about a brief 10-year period from my late teens to my late 20s when I got distracted with other things. But then in 2003 I discovered Board Game Geek and I got back into the hobby, and basically for the past 20 years I've been on BGG nearly daily and gradually building up a collection of board games. I also sort of got into Kickstarter a little bit when it first came onto the board gaming scene about 12 years ago, and I would pledge for about 3 or 4 games per year up until about 5 years ago when I decided I could no longer do that. Now, that was largely due to financial reasons. I was no longer in a position where I could loan a gaming company a bunch of money, and then either one of two things would happen. Either they would send me a game at some point, which ultimately I would end up paying a lot more for than if I had just waited for it to show up on my local board game store shelves, or the company would go under and I would receive nothing for my money. So with the exception of the most recent Planet Unknown crowdfunding campaign, I haven't crowdfunded anything in the past 5 years. But anyways, like I said, for the past 20 years non-stop, I've been into this hobby. I rapidly, obviously, grew a collection of games. At some point, it hovered between about 100 to 110, 120 games or so, and I decided that was kind of my max. And really for the past maybe 15 years or so, I've had more or less a one game in, one game out policy, where in order for a game to remain on my shelves long term, it really had to be the best of the best. So in that way, over the past couple decades, I've curated what is for me a really perfect collection of games. This topic also got me curious, and I looked at my current top 25 games of all time, and I looked at the years that they were originally released, and I realized that the average year of release for my top 25 games is about 2003. Now there is one game in there, poker specifically, that really throws off that average. So if I remove poker from the list and just look at the other 24, the average year of release is about 2011. So the average game in my top favorite 25 games is roughly 12 years old. Now, all that being said, I do keep close track of what is being released, what's coming out. I do have about 250 games on my Board Game Geek wish list where I track games that I have some interest in, because I haven't really kind of gone through and edited it down recently. But there's really honestly been nothing released in the past few years that's really excited me all that much. And I'm certainly quite happy with the collection I have. So I think it's pretty clear on which side of the Cult of the New versus Old fence that I sit on. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Will, and with me as always is the board game cultist herself,
Sarah.
And we're rolling with two. And this is our take on Cult of the New. So I know for me personally, I like to get on top of games more because I like to see the iterative process of board games and how they're designed. I like to see new takes on old concepts and new innovations that come up. So that's where I like to see and why I'm so interested in new stuff. However, when it comes to actually finding any of these things, That's your problem.
Yeah, it really is my problem. I'm the one out there looking for things. Now, there are certain games that we do try to get as soon as they come out, and it's more of expansions for games like Dominion. Yeah. We always look for the newest Dominion expansion, and there's been a few other games like that.
You could say I dress up for that.
Yes, he does. So there are certain, I guess, not just IPs, but there are certain games that have ongoing like expansions. Those are kind of things that we do try to keep up with.
Yeah, there are also certain board game companies out there that do like one print run, and they don't keep things in print.
Right, so that's really where when we go out to really get the new game, it's not necessarily because we want to be the first to get it. We just want to make sure we get a copy.
Right.
Because we've been having, I don't know, I've heard this from other people too, but having challenges getting games in retail settings. So there's been times where pre-ordering is just easier because we know we're going to get a copy rather than waiting for retail, see if a local retailer gets it, see if we can find an online retailer that gets it. I mean, there is stuff that we wait for, obviously, because we do not feel like we need to be the first people to get things. I mean, if we see something really exciting, we're going to go for it. The other thing that we kind of just happen to be cult of the new is we back a lot of crowdfunding games.
Yeah, and that comes back to my thing of I like to see new iterations on things. And so that's what she looks for a lot is, well, this uses binders.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that before. Like, okay, let's see that. And it could be completely a terrible game.
Right. And so in that respect, I don't really see it as cult of the new, but as cult of the future new. So we back all these Kickstarters, but then it takes a year or two before we get them. But then we end up getting them before they hit retail. So we end up having them before anybody else, which makes us look like we're on cult of the new, but we were actually cult of the future.
Yes.
So
yeah, there are so many games that we got them first, we still haven't played them.
Right. Right. So being just a game being new is not enough for us to be like, yeah, let's go get it. It has to be a lot of other factors behind it. So I wouldn't say that we are necessarily cult of the new. It's more of we are cult of the interesting, what interests us.
Yes. And you can check out more of that on our YouTube channel on Rolling with Two on YouTube.
Are we rolling?
We are. Hey, it's the Chasing Meeples. I'm Chris.
I'm Angie.
And we're here to talk about, I guess, the cult of the new. And we also want to introduce you guys to a new segment we want to do on this. And that is called...
Are we rolling?
Yeah, Are We Rolling? Where we want to try to connect the game that we want to talk about to... Basically, we want it to be a dice game. That's the way we want to do it, because dice roll. Ha ha ha. All right, what game are we talking about this month?
The newest iteration from the Terraforming Mars family, Terraforming Mars, the dice game. When I first heard of this, I thought it was a joke. But it's real. And it is a real Terraforming Mars game. It has the same win conditions. It's got the same boards, the tiles. The difference are the dice, obviously. But these dice are your resources. So it's no more gold cubes, no more silver cubes. You need the dice. And these are what you're going to spend to buy your cards. The interesting and difficult thing about this game is the dice have 3 different sides. So when you purchase a card, not only do you need the water and the grass, you need to have the specific side. So if I have a blue die, I need the blue water, or I might need the lightning bolt. So that is where it gives me a lot of AP. In this game, you're going to have 2 actions you can take.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. It gives you a lot of AP. Yeah. That's what I was acknowledging.
Okay. One of the actions you can do, and this is pretty much it. You have 2 actions. You can either take one action, it's going to be your playing action, where you have a optional beginning action where you can get a new die. You can change the die by paying another die So this is where you're almost like a hand management, you have a dice management. So maybe you can change that die you want, but there's not too many ways you can. So you have an optional. We usually use that optional to get more dice. And then your basic actions tend to be play a card, buy a water tile, buy that greenery tile, all the same as the base game. The other action is production. Now this can be tricky because as in the base game, you want as many of the cubes as possible. With this one, you can only have 3 dice during your production round. And then obviously you're going to make more, but you have to have, maybe you're going to find one of those cards that gives you extra storage. That's going to be a good card to get because 3 dice, you want to roll things over, rolling. But when you do produce dice, you're going to roll them, and that is what you're going to have to work with for that next round. So this is an interesting game. What do you think about it?
Oh, I enjoy it. Truth be told, it's not going to replace Ares Expedition for me, but it's a nice way to shake up Terraforming Mars a little bit.
You know, out of 3 games, I would rather play Ares Expedition or even base game over this one.
The original.
But it's really interesting. So it is a game for me that if you have a chance to play it before you buy it. But that is Are We Rolling? Thank you for letting us be here and participate in Tabletop Tea Time.
Don't forget to check out our podcast, Chasing Meeples, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Bye.
I must sadly admit that Terraforming Mars the Dice game is on my shelf, but it is unplayed. Shelf of Opportunity, Shelf of Shame. We'll definitely cover that on another one of the Tabletop Tea Times. Now, this time it's Cult of the New, and I come at this from a couple of angles. First of all, as a creator, it's kind of important to be not necessarily be the first, but be one of the first to talk about a new game when it's been out. So it's quite hard to do that if you're not Cult of the New. Sometimes a brand new game comes out, it's going to be what everyone wants to hear about. Also, from like YouTube analytics side of things, you go and watch someone's video on the brand new game and it might link your video on that brand new game. So it's important to sort of, for that reason, play the new stuff. Personally, it's fun to play new games though. It's not always something that you want to be doing because there's rule books to read and everything. So you've got to have some comfort classics. Now, they don't necessarily need to be really old games, but ones that you can always go back to. Ones that you can enjoy without really touching the rule book, without sort of having to learn anything. You go back to play a Carcassonne, a Love Letter, an Unmatched or something. Well, Unmatched is Cult of the New and the Old in a way, in terms of play an old set, you know how it works. Play a new set, new people. So that's a bit of a sort of both one. But a game like Love Letter, I don't need to know it. I can deal the cards out. I can explain the entire game without looking at the rule book. And I can just play that. And a lot of my friends just know the game. So sometimes Cult of the New is brilliant because it's new, it's fun, it's different. Other times, well, you just want that game where you can get it to the table and play. It's maybe a more chilled game night, or one where you just haven't had time or don't want to read that rule book. So there is time for both. Now let's hand over to Evan, who's going to talk about a game that we've probably never heard of, and well, in my case, that sort of probably is I've never heard of it.
Hey everybody, I'm Evan, and today I'm going to show you a game you've probably never heard of. Everybody remembers the game Old Maid, right? Classic game where you're having a hand of cards and you're pulling one from one of your neighbors and trying to play pairs, trying to not get stuck with the old maid. What if I told you there's a newer game that takes that concept, flips it on its head, and adds Cthulhu and zombies and pirates and an adventure theme? Well, that game is called the Deadland. And let's go down to the table and I'll show you how it works. The Deadland is a game for 2 to 5 players. However, 2 players I believe is a variant. It says it takes 15 to 25 minutes to play. That's about right, I suppose. And it says 8 plus for the age, but who's counting? It is published by Tactical Games, and it is designed by Tatsuka Cho, who you may know from such games as Ostia or Aqua Garden. In this game, you are adventurers on this rickety old bridge with Cthulhu monster on one side, zombies on another side, and pirates down below trying to shoot you or attack you from either side. The idea is you want to be the last person standing, essentially. And to do that, a turn goes as follows. You draw a card from one of your neighbors at random, add it to your hand. Then you would either have to play one card or a pair of cards. If you play one card, you have to move that many spaces in that direction. So if you're a yellow player, you would move 6 spaces. Plus 6. And then the evil, if it says evil, that triggers the evil side, and they take out a plank. And then it would be the next player's turn. So as the game goes, players are going to be moving around. Planks are going to be being destroyed. However, if you want to play a pair of cards, you play 2 of the same number, and then you stay in the same spot. So you don't move at all. So as you can see, as the game goes on, it gets more dangerous and more dangerous as planks are removed. And if you ever happen to play cards that either send you off the edge or into the water, you are out. So when it gets just down to one player, that player survives when the helicopter comes and picks them up. I forgot to mention that if you play a card with pirates on it, then you roll this pirate die. And it shows which plank in the middle will be destroyed. So essentially, that is the Deadland. So there you have it. That's the Deadland. I think it's a very silly, but also very fun game. It's pretty fast-paced, and as long as you're in the mood for something really random, you're not looking for something too strategic, I think you'll have a good time with it. At the time of this recording, copies are available on Amazon.jp, which is where I went and got mine. So good luck. If that sounds interesting, go ahead and track yourself down a copy. The English rules are on the publisher's website. All right, well, hey, happy tea time, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Let us know if you have heard of the game in the comments section below, but now a few things that I've sort of watched on the internet recently in the board gaming world that I think you might want to check out. Now, first of all, Libby from Boxed Meeples did a daily diary of Spiel Essen, and well, I've got to plug the video that I was part of in day 3, I believe it was. I'll definitely have the link to it in the description box below. A great sort of way for you to see what the convention was like if you've not been, and maybe to decide if you'd want to go next year. So that will be in the description box below. And it would be a little amiss of me not to shout out Best of the Month, which is the other creator collaboration series that goes on this channel. Every month, creators come on and talk about what they've enjoyed most from that month that's new to them or they haven't played in a long time. It's a lot of fun, and that goes on every month, so go and check that out. And third, but not finally or least, Meeple PhD has put out a top games for Halloween. Now, it's certainly coming up to that time of year. Now, I don't want these videos to be entirely sort of locked into a time of year, but Halloween is coming soon, so that might be a video for you to go and check out and get in the sort of spooky mood. And while we're talking about Meeple PhD, well, Barb is actually the sort of creator in the spotlight creator for this month. So let's hand over to her to tell you a little bit about herself and her channel before some rapid fire questions.
Hi, I'm Barb, Meeple PhD, and I am excited to be here on this first episode of Tabletop Tea Time, and even more excited that Oliver asked me to do this first spotlight. So first I wanted to just tell you a little bit about myself and my channel. I have a channel called Meeple PhD, and I want to give you a little about my background because it'll make the channel make a little more sense. So I am an astronomer. I no longer do research though. I found out I was really good at science communications. And using my background in astronomy, I now run a small communications team out of a division at a National Space Agency where we tell the stories of the results that come out of our scientists in our division. And those scientists study anything from our nearest neighbor star out to the farthest reaches of the universe. And I love telling those stories. And so when I started thinking about what I wanted to do in the board game world, because I was drawn to doing content creation, I love board games, I wanted to add something to the space. And so I decided to bring those two sides of myself together, my love of board games and my love of astronomy. If you love astronomy and you love board games, I'd say check it out and come have some fun with me because I think you'll really enjoy it.
And now for some rapid fire questions. So, what's your favourite game and what's your favourite mechanism?
That has to be Dungeon Pets. Hands down, has been for years. I love how this game plays. I love the art. And it just, for me, is a very, very fun experience. What is my favorite board game mechanism? That's a hard one because on any day it could be a number of different things, but I'm gonna say deck building or pool building. I have a lot of games on my shelf that have this mechanic. Clank is among my favorite games of all time, and so I'm just gonna say deck building. Yes.
A bit of a fun one, but what is your favourite Meeple?
That has to be Amritsar, the Golden Temple. This is a game I got to try a couple months ago at the Dice Tower Retreat, and it's got this giant elephant meeple in it. If you know anything about me, I love elephants. They are my favorite animal, so it has to be Amritsar.
What was the last game that you played?
That would be Spellbook. I picked that up at my friendly local game store when I saw they had it a couple weeks ago, and I've gotten it to the table a few times, and most recently last night I introduced it to my spouse and we've been having a lot of fun with it and we are really charmed by this game.
Aside from board gaming, what other hobbies do you have?
What other hobbies do I have? Well, I don't believe in doing any cheap hobbies apparently, because my two other main hobbies are working on an antique car and crafting. So this antique car was my grandfather's. He restored it in the late 70s. My dad took it over in the 90s. And then when my dad passed away, I inherited the car. And then crafting, I have been a lifelong crafter. Most recently, I have learned how to use a loom because I have my great-great-grandmother's loom and I would love to be able to see if I can get it working. And so that is my latest project for crafting.
And what can people expect to see on your channel in the next few weeks?
So that's a little bit about me. I hope you've enjoyed kind of getting to know me a little bit. Coming up on my channel in the next few weeks, I am continuing this series that I've been doing called Board Game Mechanisms in the Universe, where I am taking a random walk through the board game mechanisms as listed on Board Game Geek and finding out where they remind me of objects in the universe or the way that we study the universe. You know, for example, a rondelle kind of reminds me of an orbit. In the coming weeks, I'm going to have a video on 3D movement in board games and another one on hidden victory points. So come check those out. I'm also going to be looking at my top 3 Halloween games and also my top 3 Polyomino games soon. So if any of that sounds interesting, please come on over and find my channel. I'm sure it's linked in the show notes below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of your tea time and grab a cup for me.
And well, that wraps up the first ever Tabletop Tea Time. I hope you really have enjoyed. Please let us know thoughts in the comment section below, certainly on what you did like about the show, so we can look to improve. Thank you to all the creators that were on today's episode. Their links will be in the description box down below, alongside these sort of links to what I found on the internet, so you can go and check all of that out. And thank you very much for watching, and until next time, have a great month gaming.